You know that advice we've all heard a million times? Go to school, get a good job, save your money. But what if that was actually terrible financial advice? Well, today we're diving into Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. This is the book that just blew the lid off conventional wisdom and showed the world how the wealthy really think about money. All right, so the whole book is really built around this one simple but incredibly powerful story. The author, Robert Kiyosaki, he basically grew up with two dads. You had his own father, who he calls Poor Dad, and then you had his best friend's father, the Rich Dad. And let me tell you, their ideas about money were polar opposites. And this is really the core conflict, right? It's this clash of worldviews that Kiyosaki was surrounded by. On one hand, his poor dad was all about that familiar path. Go to school, get good grades, find a safe, secure job with benefits, the whole 9 yards. But then Rich Dad comes in with this totally radical idea. Forget working for money. You need to learn how to make money work for you. And here's where it gets really fascinating. His so-called poor dad, super educated, had a PhD, a stable government job, but he struggled with money his entire life. Meanwhile, his rich dad was an 8th-grade dropout who went on to become a self-made millionaire. I mean, wow. So Kiyosaki basically had a front row seat to see which of these two mindsets actually led to real financial freedom. All right, so let's get into the first big lesson from Rich Dad. It's an idea that, honestly, just completely reframes how you think about your job and your paycheck. And it's simple. The rich don't work for money. Okay, so his poor dad believed what a lot of us are taught. The love of money is the root of all evil. And you know this mindset. It's the one that says, hey, just be happy you have a steady paycheck, don't take any risks, and it can even make you feel kind of guilty for wanting to build wealth. But Rich Dad, he just flipped that idea completely on its head. He argued that it's the lack of money that's the real root of evil. Think about it. It's that constant stress and worry about paying bills that leads to fear and bad decisions. For him, money wasn't this evil thing. Nope, it was just a tool. And financial education, that was the instruction manual for how to use that tool right. And this all leads to a concept I'm sure you've heard of, the rat race. This is the big question Rich Dad would ask. Are you in the rat race? You know the drill. You get up, you go to work, you earn a paycheck, you pay your bills, and then Monday rolls around and you have to do it all over again. You're running and running, but you're not actually getting anywhere. And this diagram here perfectly shows what he means. Your job gives you income, right? But then that money immediately flows out to pay for everything. Taxes, your rent or mortgage, food, car payments. The money comes in one door and goes straight out the other. You're basically left with zero at the end of the month, which forces you to get back on that hamster wheel just to do it all over again. So, the first lesson is all about how to escape this cycle. And it's not about just working harder or getting a raise. No, it's a fundamental shift in your thinking. The goal is to stop working for money and start having your money work for you, making you an income even while you sleep. Okay, so that's the big idea, but how do you actually make money work for you? Well, it all comes down to what is probably the single most important concept in this entire book, and that's understanding the difference between two little words, an asset and a liability. Now, forget all that complicated financial jargon you've heard. Kiyosaki boils it down to something so simple it's brilliant. An asset? It's just something that puts money in your pocket. That's it. End of story. Think of it like a little money-making machine that you own. And a liability is, you guessed it, the exact opposite. It's anything that takes money out of your pocket. Seriously, if you can just get this one simple distinction, it will change every financial decision you make for the rest of your life. And these two diagrams show the whole story. Look at the left. That's the cash flow from most people. Your income from your job comes in, and it goes right out to pay for expenses and liabilities. But now, look at the diagram on the right. This is the cash flow of the rich. They take their income, and they buy assets. And then those assets generate more income. See the difference? It becomes this powerful, self-sustaining cycle of wealth. And this leads us to maybe the most controversial thing in the entire book. This is the one that really gets people fired up. Kiyosaki says that what most people think is their biggest asset, their house, is actually not an asset at all. Now, why on earth would he say that? Well, let's go back to our simple definition. Does the house you live in put money in your pocket every month? No, it takes money out of your pocket. You've got the mortgage, property taxes, insurance, maintenance. It's a constant drain. So by that simple definition, it's a liability. Now, a rental property that you own and someone else pays you rent for, that's an asset. Okay, so we get it. The goal is to buy assets. But let's be real, you still got to pay the bills, right? You have a day job. So how do you do both? Well, that brings us to Rich Dad's third big lesson, which is mind your own business. And what he means by that is you need to understand the difference between your profession and your business. Your profession, that's your 9 to 5 job. It's what pays the bills and puts food on the table. But your business, that's your asset column. That's what you do with your time and money outside of your job to build real wealth. Your job keeps you afloat. Your business is what makes you rich. So what are we talking about here? Your business is your portfolio of real assets. This could be stocks that pay you dividends, rental properties that bring in monthly cash flow, maybe royalties from a book you wrote, or even a side hustle that you build into a real business. These are the things that are out there making money for you 24/7, even when you're on vacation. All right, so when you put all of these lessons together, it really comes down to a fundamental choice. You get to decide what kind of financial story you want to write for yourself. And really, it all boils down to this one single idea. The poor and middle class spend their lives buying liabilities that they think are assets. You know, the fancy car, the latest gadgets, things that lose value. But the rich, they use their money to buy assets. One group is stuck in a cycle that drains their wealth. The other is building an engine that creates more wealth. It's as simple as that. And so the book leaves all of us with a final, really powerful question. It's not just about changing what you do, it's about changing who you are. From someone who just works for a paycheck to an investor who's building a future. So the most important question isn't how much money did I make this week? The real question is, what asset are you buying today?